right. Welcome back to the Rise and Go podcast. I am your host, Michael Davis. Before we get started here, I want to make sure our listeners know where to find us. So, the Rise and Go podcast can be found on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube. Pretty simple to find. We have links in our bio. You can find us on Instagram at ElevantMPLS. You can find us on TikTok at Elevant5. And we'd love to hear from our listeners. One thing that I think would be great for us is to like, subscribe, and share it with everybody that you know. We're meeting with some really cool people here. There's some fascinating stories that we're really uncovering the challenges that people are overcoming in life. And it speaks to our motto: rise and go, one life, chase it. And yeah, send us in any questions or any listeners that I shouldn't say listeners, any guests that you'd like to see on the podcast. We are wide open here as we transition into a new year. But I'm really excited to have our next guest here. Lindsay, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hello. Thanks for having me, Mike. And thanks for everyone that's tuning in, watching, listening. So, as Mike said, my name's Lindsay, also known as Coach Lowe. I think, Mike, we met, it was almost like 15 years ago, probably. Yeah,
Uh,
through
y-
through Lifetime.
yeah, it was 2010. It was like right after I graduated college. We started at Lifetime working in sales together.
Yes. So I started, I wouldn't say my fitness journey there, but working in the fitness industry about 15 years ago. So as Mike said, started in membership sales. So getting people signed up to work work out at the gym. And I kept meeting these people, hearing their stories, and I wouldn't want to hand them off. Like I would want to work with them. So I was like, how do I make this a job? How do I make this a career? And fast forward 15 years now, I'm still doing it. I'm still with Lifetime. I train, I do classes, I do nutrition coaching, I do a lot of speaking outside of Lifetime with different corporations and with local news stations. But I'm just very passionate about what taking care of your body, both mentally and physically, can do for you, and how that basically is affecting the rest of your life, like whether that's work, family, friends, your spiritual health, your social health, like whatever it is. If you take care of yourself, then you're going to be showing up as a better person regardless of what you're doing. So I'm really passionate about it, or I wouldn't still be doing it.
Ain't that the truth? Well, I love to hear you say that because my own health journey has taken a big turn here in the past couple of years. And by putting a huge focus on it, I've seen some really amazing changes, like not only in my energy levels, the way I perform in the gym, the way I perform when I'm playing baseball. And like you said, the way that I just show up in life. I think that's super important that the topics that we're likely going to dive into today is so important because I think health is something that is a huge focus in today's world with, I it's funny because I think about like all of like processed foods versus whole foods, like what is like people taking Ozempic versus like actually going to the gym and exercising and realizing that your health is an actual journey, right? But we'll dive into all that. But before we get into like the major details, share with us a little bit more about like your background. If I'm not mistaken, were you an athlete in college or no?
No. So I actually grew up in a small town in southern Iowa. It's called Centerville. And in a small town, you do everything. Because I feel like in the Twin Cities, you basically have to pick your sport when you're in third grade, and that's it. But when I was growing up, I played lots of sports. I would say my favorite was volleyball and still is volleyball. But grew up playing sports. And I like to tell people that I grew up active, but not healthy. And what I mean by that is I was a very skinny kid, and like I said, very active. Corn in my house, or corn was a vegetable growing up in my home. I joke that hamburger helper was like a home cooked meal. I didn't learn much about nutrition or how to take care of myself outside of just being active growing up. I got more intrigued when I was in college. So I went to Iowa State 2006 to 2010 and did not play a sport there. I did some intramural, but that was about it. But I got into an ROTC workout class. So it was 3 days a week, 6 a.m. We got a credit for it, but that's where I got into more organized group, like working out. And I really enjoyed it, got a lot faster at running, ended up doing a marathon in college. So I had definitely my like running stint there where I got really into it. And then at the end of college, I found CrossFit. So I started doing it in college. When I moved up here, I actually started working for Marriott. So I graduated with hospitality management and public relations. So that's what brought me up to the Twin Cities. Never thought I'd be here as long as I am now. But at that time when I moved here, I was like, okay, find a place to live, find a place to work out. What CrossFit gym am I going to go to? So I ended up going to CrossFit Minnesota, which was in Edina, and I loved it. Like I loved the community. I loved the people. I never wanted to leave there. I would get mad if I didn't get off work in time to go make a workout class. So I basically fell in love with organized group working out at that time and the community of it. So fast forward a little bit and decided that the career I was in was not for me, and thought, how do I make what CrossFit is a career? And I wasn't in a position to be a full-time coach or have my own facility. So my roommate at the time was like, you should check out Lifetime. I'd never heard of Lifetime. I'd never been in a Lifetime, but I remember walking in, met with the GM when I walked in, and a week later, I think I was working there.
Yeah.
So I've always been active. I've always challenged myself and pushed myself physically. I would say I got more into nutrition in about 2016. I was working out pretty hard and in my early 20s, but I was having injuries. I was having to, nap every single day. I was craving all the carbs, and I just knew that wasn't right. So that's when I sought out help when it came to nutrition, had my experience through that, and then thought, well, heck, if I'm this quote unquote healthy person and I had these things happen from addressing my nutrition, what could it do for other people? So I would say currently, I love training. I love group training. And I do love nutrition coaching. I feel like you can just go so much deeper with people, and it is a lot of mental more than anything with nutrition. I always tell people, you go to the gym, maybe it's an hour a day, right? But how much are you thinking about or around food, and just addressing your mindset going into those situations and how you handle them?
I absolutely love it. You know what's funny is I knew you went to college in Iowa. I didn't realize you were at Iowa State. So I was at Iowa Central, which is in Fort Dodge, which is like 30 minutes away from Ames. So we were in Iowa at the same time, and then oh god. But I was only there for 2 years, so I ended up graduating at school for out in Tennessee, but it's like we were like in the same place at the same time, and then lo and behold, we're next thing you know, we're working together. And I remember, I believe Carrie Sutherland was the
Yes.
GM at Lifetime when we both started there, and it's so funny because I probably ran into him. Oh man, it was probably 6, 7 months ago at Lifetime at Target Center, and I was just like, I don't think you remember me, but I'm like, "Carrie, I don't know if you know this, but you're the one who, like, got me my start at Lifetime." I feel like we share this too, is, like, when I, like, first joined Lifetime, it's just a place that I've fallen in love with. It's like, I could literally spend probably 6 hours there because there's so much that you can do. And,
Mm-hmm.
for me, it's, a lot of times during the week, it's like I'm either playing hoops, hitting the weight room. I am doing bikes. I've done classes, but something that have really fallen in love with is the sauna, and I feel like that is like my ultimate recovery tool, and it's been amazing because I don't feel like any other fitness facility can even compare to Lifetime. Now, I'm sure there's, some boutique studios out there, but the offerings that Lifetime has, I really think it just sets itself apart from every other option that there is, in Minnesota and across the country as they continue to grow. So let me ask you this. What was it about Lifetime that really drew you in and, has kept you there for the last 15 years?
Yeah, it's interesting because when you were talking, I think Lifetime even says this. They have the places, the programs, and the people. And undeniably, these places are beautiful. All the amenities you would ever want. The programs are very competitive with, people that are only that thing, right? So we think of like Alpha competing with standalone boutiques. And then the people. And I think the people really stood out around the time of COVID because the communities that were built prior to shutdowns like that remained through that time. Like they stayed connected, they checked in on each other because, like I said, going back to health is not just physical, it's mental as well. And you really feel that even within a large facility. So I think that like the people that I've gotten to work with, I mean, I have clients still to this day that had when I started. Like they've been with me twice a week for almost 15 years. And that says a lot. And there's so much of that at Lifetime. You have to go within the club to find that, but it can be just as good as any other small boutique operation. I think for me professionally, I've had a lot of opportunities with Lifetime. I am back to where I started being frontline team member and working with members, but I've had the opportunity to travel in grand open clubs. I've had the opportunity to do certifications and programming on a national level. I've had an opportunity to do digital programming when we did have the shutdowns and provide nutrition and training support for people that couldn't, make it into the gym, or they needed more than what they could get at that time, just online Googling things. Like we wanted to give them smart and educational content. So I've had lots of different opportunities, and it's challenged me in different ways to step up to the plate and, refine my professional capabilities. But then it's always been about the member. And that goes back to
Mhm.
even why I started training, because I would meet people and I would be the one that wants to support them and wants to help them. It's funny because I'm gonna tell a really quick story. I remember when I was at Chanhassen, because I've been at a couple different clubs. I was gone for a little bit, and I came back. It was like a trip or something, nothing bad. I came back, and one of my class members said, "It was really weird." I was like, "What was weird?" And they said, "Well, when you were gone, the coach that was here kept saying, 'Good job.'" And I kind of laughed. And my, I guess, brand, or what I'm known for, is I'm kind of a hard coach, but it comes from a place of high expectations. Like I expect a lot out of myself and I expect a lot out of others. And so I think when you say good job, or there's an overuse of good job, that it dilutes what it really means to do a good job. And then, like, furthering that, I think why I train and why I coach is because I believe so much, even if people don't believe in themselves. And so I set that stage for them of like, you can do more. And I believe you can do more. Now I just need you to believe you can do more. So I think I've had lots of opportunities to do that, not only for myself with Lifetime, but then with the people that I work with one on one and in classes.
I love that you said that, and it can be hard to push people. You gave me like a little bit of a terror flashback to like my college coaches, because they were very military style 5 a.m. workouts, and I mean we're busting our ass 24/7. But seeing the results of that work that you're putting in when you push yourself, this is like miracles can happen in that space. And I think that's something where, being brutally honest about, hey, this is the way that I'm going to coach you. This is my expectation. I think people respect that when they know, like, hey, this person is going to push me. And, when you are, I don't want to say you're being hard on them, but when you're pushing them in that way, they're going to respond in the right way, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, even in class, when people will say, this is hard, I'm like, well, we didn't come to class for easy, right? Like you came here to work, and so that's what we're doing. And I think anything in life that you have that you've dedicated time and energy to was not easy, and you learn the most in those times and in those processes. So I always tell people, if something comes easily, it's going to leave easily too. So you even mentioned like the GLP-1s, Ozempic, whatever that is. I work with a lot of people that are on it. I think it can be very beneficial for people that have had a health history with diabetes, obesity. It is a lifesaver for them, because we also know that those things don't end well, right?
Hmm.
But they have to also address the lifestyle behaviors, and that is still work. So I don't think it gets this rep of like the easy way out. Well, it can be the easy way out if they don't address those other things, but they're only setting themselves up for maybe a worse situation if they're not
Hmm.
addressing those things, like strength training, like eating enough, right? Because they just don't want to eat on it. That's the whole point. But you have to eat enough because your body needs nutrients, it needs energy. So I enjoy working with those people because they obviously want to make change, but sometimes they're just not sure how to go about that change other than taking this medication. So I think yeah, it's like whatever you put that energy and time and effort into, you're gonna get tenfold versus if it was easy button.
I couldn't agree more, and I'm glad you called me out on that Ozempic, because I think I have like an irrational, like, distaste for it, simply because it's like I've lost a lot of weight, but I didn't have to take supplements. I didn't take like anything as far as like weight loss pills. It's like I just went to the gym, I worked my ass off, and I ate right, and I just stuck to a whole foods diet. I'll admit, I use Chipotle diet. Have you heard of that diet?
And
Okay, so I'll give you a quick breakdown. What I would do is I would eat something very small in the morning, like a protein bar or something. But then I'd go to Chipotle every single day. I'd get a giant bowl, no tortilla. It would be like double rice, double chicken, and then all healthy, like salsa, lettuce, no cheese, no sour cream. So it's like the healthiest bowl you can find, but it was huge. And I'd eat half of it for lunch and half of it for dinner. So it was like that was my meal plan. It was so simple, so easy to follow, and it worked. And I think that's one of the things where it's like I think selfishly about like the all the hard work that I put in, the sacrifices that I had to make, the things that I really had to concentrate on. That I look at Ozempic almost like a weight loss supplement that you get at like a GNC. Am I making sense here?
yeah, I mean, I think when it first came on the scene, it definitely wasn't that. And you had to work with a doctor. You had to work with someone that normally was like obesity certified. They like you had to do blood work with them. And now there's all these online quote unquote pharmacies that are making concoctions that you don't actually know what's in them. And I remember looking at one because my friend was asking me about it. And I was like, this feels weird to me that this is less expensive than a protein powder. Like, I don't know. Like, I wouldn't if you don't know what's in it, then I wouldn't inject that into my body. I can only speak for myself. I know of a lot of people that do them and they seem to be fine on them, but I've also heard opposite happen. So I think that is something where you just have to be smart. Like with anything that you ingest or you put into your body, I would do your research and I would work with someone that is certified to also support you through that.
For sure. And I think that's where the education, not only for my own sake, but for our listeners' sake, is, there are, a wide range of options that you can take. And it's really about like finding the right thing for you. So how do you help your clients kind of navigate, like getting into like a healthy lifestyle? Because I'm sure people come from all different backgrounds. I'm thinking about like someone who's never been in the gym before, is terrified to walk in. They want to make this, a new phase of their life. Like, how do you work with them? How do you get them started? Give me like the full break.
Yeah, so it's interesting because I mean, I get new people in class all the time, but I haven't had like a one on one strength training client that's new in a long time because I just basically have a full schedule of clients that have been with me. But I get new people to nutrition. So I think there's kind of two things I start with. Number one is taking inventory. Like, where are we at with certain things, right? Because I think it's so quick to say, oh, it's this or oh, it's that. Like, I feel like there's so much online now. It's cortisol, it's hormones, it's where I'm at in perimenopause or menopause, or this is more for women, obviously, that I'm speaking to. But I think that there's no power in that. And what I mean by that is you need to control the controllables, and there's still a lot of things that are in our control. So I start with taking inventory of what are those things, right? So what's our quality and quantity of sleep? We do look at food, whether that's tracking macros or just taking pictures of their meals. We have to start somewhere, right? Because I know tracking can be a stressful thing for people, but we're starting somewhere with taking inventory of what are we eating, when are we eating, how much are we eating, looking at bowel movements, looking at your stress, your energy, your performance. Like, we're taking inventory of everything because that will start to call out the things that we actually need to address. Because I think sometimes we like to point our finger and blame something, but what are we doing on a day-to-day basis that are quick fixes that we just need to be consistent with, right? So that kind of leads me to my second thing is, what do you enjoy? I think so many people get caught up in this perfect diet, this perfect workout plan, this perfect sleep routine, whatever it is. And I'm like, but what do you enjoy? Because that's the thing that you're most likely going to be consistent with. Let's start there and build versus adding all this complexity of a supplement plan or this online workout program or whatever that you feel overwhelmed by. You maybe do it for 3 days and then you say, ah, screw it. And you go back to what you know, right? Like, we have current habits and behaviors because they served us at one point or another. A good example of that is when people started drinking over COVID. At that point, maybe it served a purpose for you, but what's it doing for you 5, 6 years later, right? So I think it's looking at, what are we doing? Why are we doing those things? And are they getting us closer to or further from our goals? So it's really taking inventory. And then if we're going to start making changes, let's start with what we know we enjoy so that we can at least be consistent with it.
I would say you kinda hit me with a nail through the heart because like, I really struggle with drinking during COVID because like, I'm a busybody, I have to be active, and it's like, you can't go to the gym, and I am not the person that's gonna go outside for a run. I can't do it. I have to have some sort of competitive activity in order to do my cardio, but, I think that brings up a really good point too of, when you look at nutrition, what are like I'll just say top 5 like things that you see where you implement the most change in with your
I'd say the first one is understanding what calories even are. Like calories are a unit of energy. So a lot of times I actually start with people understanding energy in, energy out. So you've heard calories in, calories out. But I start with the out piece because people, especially because I meet them in the gym, they over index how important workouts are. And they think that like they look at their calorie burn on their watch and they're like, oh, then I can eat, 500 more calories, or their MyFitnessPal tells them that because they're activity loaded. And I'm like, no, your workout is such a small percentage of your output. Your basal metabolic rate, just a lot of your genetics, is most of your day. And then to your point, your non-exercise activity, you're walking around, if you have a labor job, if you're doing chores around the house, that's more of your caloric burn. So I try to get them to shift this mindset of they work out to lose weight, because most people are coming to me with nutrition because they have weight loss goals, and by that they mean fat loss, right? So understanding where's the energy actually going throughout the day, and then talking to them about what it means to be in a deficit. So I think a lot of times people think they need to do extreme things, like they need to go cut out carbs or they need to go to 1300 calories to lose weight. Yeah, those things will work, but they're not sustainable, right? Like you can maybe do them for a short amount of time and you'll see some results, but you're going to revert right back to what you know because you can't live like that. So I try to get people to understand that when we work together, we just need a little deficit. We don't need to go extreme. Like my goal with clients is always to get you to eat as much as you can while still seeing progress, because then you're going to have a lot of flexibility. You're going to be able to go into the holidays and not have anxiety. You're going to be able to go on your trip and not get worried about the chips and guac that you had, which kind of leads me to my next point of it's what you do most of the time, not some of the time. And that's why even when I work with clients, the way I have them track, we look at averages more than any individual day, because that's what matters more over time. It's not your one meal or your one day where you were quote unquote off track, but it's what you do majority of the time. So let's say, as an example, eating out, right? If I can get someone that's eating out 10 times a week right now to get down to 8 and then to 6, we're making progress just there in caloric intake because they're making more food, that they're paying attention to what's going into it and the portions that are in it versus eating out more. So it's like people think they need to overhaul their lives when in all reality, they just need to make small changes, but consistently done over time. So everybody's individual at that point of like what I said earlier, taking inventory, right? So maybe someone's really low with sleep and we need to talk about that. Maybe someone is hardly getting any protein in. Like I would say hands down, that's always a common one. People start tracking and they're like, I thought it was having a lot of protein, and it's like 60 to 80 grams of protein. So I think it's not just about like protein, like, let's get jacked. It's more of like, well, that helps regulate your blood sugar. That helps you feel fuller longer. That's probably why your Chipotle works so well, right? Like you're eating things that are higher protein, higher fiber, so they're going to stay with you longer. So it's just talking about how do we tweak little things throughout our day to eventually get us to this place where not only are we seeing progress within our aesthetics and the scale, but how we feel, our energy levels, our sleep, our performance. So there's so many like lanes you can go down with that as far as what I would address, but I would say that's kind of like top down how I almost start with everybody.
for sure. And when I think about how you go about this plan, it's like you're looking for small incremental wins that leads to your ultimate goal. And I think the biggest factor that people have the hardest time like really understanding is like this takes time. This isn't something where it's like you're going to lose 30 pounds in 30 days because, like you said, that's going to be the most unhealthy and that's not sustainable. So, how do you keep your clients on track and help them understand the long game? Is it through education? Is it through being a hard ass on them, or like what is it?
No, I mean, I think differently strength training versus nutrition. So with strength training, it's obviously tracking their numbers, right? Are we doing more volume overall? Is that through sets, reps, weight, whatever that is? Do you feel better in a movement, bigger range of motion? There's lots of things we can look at there. Um, as far as nutrition goes, when I work with clients, they do track a lot, but at the end of each week, they take 4 questions, and that kind of gets them to understand, like, am I making progress? So number one, what is progress? And that can look different for everybody. Some people don't care about the number on the scale. Some people care about how their clothes fit, how they look in a swimsuit, how their blood markers are if they've gotten blood work done, maybe how their workouts are, right? So we're taking inventory of what matters to you. What are you going to be happy with as we work together? So let's look at those things on a weekly, daily, quarterly, whatever that is. Then each week they're answering what went well, what are you proud of? So I think sometimes when people are on a health journey, they focus so much on the things that aren't going right and they don't give themselves credit for the things that are. So the first question I start with is what went well? What are you proud of from this past week? And a lot of it is up here, right? So like
Sure.
they'll notice, they'll catch themselves with things and they'll take note of that, and then sometimes the actions change because of that. They stop themselves and think about it. So that's number one. Number two is what didn't go so well. Then number three is how would you change it? Because yes, I'm their coach, but my job as the coach is not to give them the answers. It's to create an environment for them to have the answers. So if they have something that didn't go well, what's your plan to fix it? Because guess what? You have the tools and resources that you need. But in the case that you don't, the fourth question is what do you need from me? Basically, how can I help support you in this? Now, I still look over all their notes and I still give them feedback, but if there's specific things that they want to go through, then that's their opportunity to share that. But I think it's just in anything that we do, whether that's nutrition, your career, your podcast, whatever it is, take inventory of what's going well and what's not going well. The things that aren't going well, how do we change them? What's the next 1 to 2 steps that we need to take to make it so that isn't a repeat week?
For sure. And well, I think what you're getting to is like holding people accountable for their actions and their results as well. I think that's an area that can be challenging because you're almost like calling them out for their bullshit. If it's like, hey, it's like, maybe you gained 2 pounds this week, but you didn't share with me everything that you ate on your meal plan. You know what I mean? And I think that's something where you eliminate that fear of failure with them. And I think that's where, again, by holding them accountable, they're going to be truthful on everything that they're sharing. Because I feel like a lot of times that's got to be a challenge where it's like, hey, I want you to be completely brutally honest with me about everything that you're eating, when you're eating, how much sleep you're getting. Because at the end of the day, it's like you're not going to be able to help them if they're not being honest with you.
And
So,
the thing that you said there, like the fear of failure, I think that's very real for people. And I alluded to tracking being stressful. I think at some point people have in their heads that like if they can't do it perfectly, then they're not going to do it. And I really encourage people to practice. I literally had a nutrition class on Monday and I talked to them about when your kids were learning to walk or ride a bike or play an instrument or whatever it is, did you expect them to get it the first or second time that they did it? No, a lot of these things they have to keep working at. They have to keep practicing. You can't expect to get good and accurate at things if you're not trying and messing up. And so people don't track because they're like, well, if I can't do it right, I'm not going to do it. I get it. Like, I understand we're trying to get numbers from this, but you're not going to get any better by avoiding it either. So, when people actually do it the correct way and they get out of scale and they use it, it can be so eye-opening for them. And then again, when they're aware of stuff, then they can start to make changes. But if you keep avoiding it, you're not aware of it. And it's so easy to again say, oh, it's because of carbs, or oh, it's because of cortisol, or oh, I'm eating too much sugar. Well, how do you know? Like, it's subjective versus objective, right? Like, and this is where I try to get people to take the feelings out of it sometimes because that's what can mess us up and focus on what are the facts. Like, what can we look at and what can we do with here instead of getting tied up in our feels.
And that's so powerful as well, where I'll bet you the majority of your clients, when they start to see the success, whether it's on the scale, fitting better in their clothes, more energy, it's like it becomes an addiction. And I think that's something where, like, when I finally started seeing consistent results when it came to like strength training, I'm losing a bunch of weight, my clothes are fitting better. It's like this is sustainable the way that I'm doing it because I know I'm doing it in a smart and like prepared way. And, to be able to stay consistent, I think is also an issue that people follow because I'm thinking about the holiday season that is right around the corner. So I want your expert advice. How are people going to deal with all the candy of Halloween? How are they going to deal with the massive intake of calories with Thanksgiving? The alcohol, the food for Christmas. Like, what advice do you give people during the holiday season?
Yeah, so you said consistency, right? And I think the thing with that is it's not perfection. Consistency doesn't mean every day, it just means more times than not. Going back to like, what are
Mhm.
we doing majority of the time? And I think, even what you just said, people in their head think, oh, we're coming into the holiday season. It's not a season, there's days. And if you think of, you have October, November, December, there's 3 months. You have Halloween, you have Thanksgiving, you have Christmas, Christmas Eve, maybe, right? That's 4 days out of 3 months. So if you turn it into an entire season of every day is, "Ah, screw it," or "F it, I'll start Monday," then yeah, it's probably not gonna be pretty come January. But if you're like, "You know what? These are my isolated events. I'm going to enjoy myself at those events. I'm not gonna stress about them. If I wanna eat more of grandma's cookies, I'm gonna eat them." Like, those are your times and your days, because if they're isolated to that, you're gonna be fine come January because you didn't do it majority of the time. But if you find yourself every weekend, multiple nights, going crazy, drinking, eating whatever you want, then yeah, that's going to be a little bit harder, but you don't have to go into it like that. You got to pick and choose. And that's even like, I would say that's where a lot of people in nutrition in general is, you hear the, I'm good all week and then the weekend I fall off the rails. I'm using quotations because there's no rails to fall off of, but um you have to treat your weekends like your weekdays. There's structure and routine to them. Same thing on the weekends. I understand you're going to eat out more, but that doesn't mean 3 meals for 3 days. That means you're picking and choosing, where are my maybe 3 meals out coming throughout this weekend, in total, not every day. So I think the holiday season's the same. Like, don't, you can still enjoy yourself. When it comes to those isolated days or those events, I still think how I think normally. I want to have protein. I want to have a good amount of color on my plate, so fruits and vegetables, and then I'm going to have whatever I want. Like, if I'm filling up with that stuff first, I'm probably not going to overeat the other things as much, and I'm still going to have them and enjoy them. Like, it's never, there's no foods that are off limit. There's no quote unquote good food and bad food. It's just, how are we fueling? And again, is it getting you closer or further to your goals? And you have to decide that. Like, no one's going to come and slap things off your plate or out of your mouth. Like, you are an adult. You can make these choices and you get to choose if it becomes a season or multiple days.
100%. And that was always something I used to struggle with, was like we'd get into like Thanksgiving and like we always had this huge meal. My sister like has neighbors over, they cook all this food and it would turn into weeks at a time where it's like I'm not going to the gym and now it becomes a cycle. And I feel like that's something that people fall into more often than not, where it's like they kind of have it this F it attitude. It's like I'm already here, I'm already doing it this way. Might as well keep going. So like how do you help people out of that cycle?
Have you ever read the book Atomic Habits by James Clear?
I swear to God, my direct supervisor recommended that book to me like a week ago, and I need to get on it because now is the second time I've heard it.
So he has this quote, and I'm not going to get it exactly right, but basically what he says is, if you mess up once, it's a mistake, move on. If you mess up twice, meaning like 2 days in a row, that's the start of a new habit. So it's kind of this rule of never 2 days in a row. Like, even if that means you didn't go to the gym one day and then you went and then you didn't go, like whatever, you're not having multiple days in a row if you're doing that thing. Or maybe it's drinking, right? Like, you drank one day, try not to make it 2 in a row, because then you're starting a new habit. So I think there's that piece of it. Also think a big thing with health and fitness is resilience. And what I mean by that is, if you get a flat tire and you pull over on the side of the road because you have a flat tire, do you flatten the other three or do you fix that and move on? And I think that's the hardest thing for people, is because they get the case of the efforts and it spirals and it snowballs, and it doesn't have to. You don't have to wait for Monday. You don't have to wait for a new month. You don't have to wait for a new year. You can literally make a different decision in that next moment. Like, you don't need to wait. And I think that's where people get stuck and they go backwards, is because they give themselves this out. Like, you hear people say too, I'm all or nothing. If I can't be perfect, then I'm nothing, is basically what they're saying. And they're giving themselves an out. They're giving themselves an excuse to quit, because they're basically saying, if I can't be perfect, then why try? I'm telling you, you can make progress and not be perfect. You just need to do more things majority of the time than you're not. And I have so many clients that have worked with me that, in hard times, right? Like hard seasons of travel or kid stuff or being sick or whatever it is, they can still make progress. They weren't perfect, but they were doing things more times than they weren't.
I think I'm a psycho in that sense where it's like, even when I'm sick, I like still go to the gym because I'm just, I don't want to call it an addiction, but I think this goes it's like to the sauna as well, where it's like, maybe I don't have my best workout. I don't have the energy, but the sauna for me is just, it's a healing factory with all the aches and pains that I have. But again, I think you said something there that really resonated with me where it's again, it's showing up is half the battle. And I think that's where if you can show up more often, it's like you're going to see the results, you're going to be happier, you're going to have more energy and everything that you're looking for is right in front of you. And that's why like I one thing that I love about our logo, I don't necessarily explain it to people like this, but you can see how it's like it goes up and to the right. So like if you stack those on top of each other, it turns into a staircase where now you're elevating yourself to places that you never thought that you would go. Cause it's like when I first took over Elevon, it's like I never would have thought I'm like where I'm at right now. And it's I apply that to all aspects of my life. Like my 9 to 5, I was in recruiting for almost 7 years. And, I just learned one day, I was like, this isn't for me anymore, but I want to move into more of a sales role. Am I prepared to do that? And I was just like, you know what? Like, there's no reason to be fearful because if you work hard enough, you're going to be successful at anything that you do. So you're getting me in the feels. That's what's happening right now, Lindsay.
Mm.
You're getting me in the feels. But
You said the showing up piece. This goes back to the Atomic Habits book too, so you're definitely gonna enjoy it. But something else he says there is that in order for a habit to be improved, it first has to be established. So to your point, even if you can't do the workout to how you think it should be done, even if you don't feel your best, simply showing up is reinforcing that habit. So even if I'm not going to go give my best workout or my best performance, just going and getting on the treadmill or going to the sauna or putting your workout shoes on, that's still showing up. It doesn't have to be what you think it's going to be, but you still need to be there.
yeah, and that's one thing I love about the Lifetime app is I can always see how many times I go to the gym, and, like, during the fall, winter, I'll say early spring, it's like I'm there 5 to 7 days a week, but then during the summer, it's like I'll fall into, like, 2 to 4 times a week because I'm playing baseball and I'm coaching, I'm doing some other things, so I recognize, like, "Hey, like, I'm really gonna go hard in the times where I'm, like, for sure dedicating myself," but also, like, I'm still showing up in those times where I know my life is gonna be a lot busier or I'm doing other physical activity that is going to be outside of the gym. And so making it a priority, I think is so important. And God, there's some days where it's like I feel like a different human being if I don't go to the gym. So,
Mhm.
I think like you said, it's like building on those habits and then it becomes a new norm for you. And there's nothing better than working out, in my opinion. But I want to chat more about like how you go about like your own workout. Like when I watch you on social media, I see you doing all this amazing stuff. So kind of walk us through, what your workout splits are. What are your favorite exercises? What do you love to do?
So I'll take it back a little bit. I mentioned I had done CrossFit. I stopped for a long time just because I was having injuries and I just didn't feel good. And so I went more of what I would say like a traditional bodybuilding split for a long time. And then I don't know, there were many years there where it was just like the consistency. Like I would still show up and I would, run a 5K here or do this event there, but I didn't really have any specific event goals or aesthetic goals or anything like that. And about 2.5 years ago, so it was going into 2024, I think. I decided I wanted to start seeking tough things. I literally said my word of the year was tough, and I wanted to start doing more event based things to challenge my body physically. So my first goal was hiking the Grand Canyon. So that was two years ago in May that I wanted to do the tri-rim. So you basically hike one way and back. So it's 42 miles and it takes like between 14 and 20 hours for most people straight through. Well, I don't know if you were following me at that time, but I ended up hurting myself. I rolled my ankle really bad. They thought it was a stress fracture, ended up being a high grade sprain. But, anyways, I only finished one way, and 21 miles of that was with basically this broken ankle that we thought. So I had a little redemption and went back this last year. So we're all great. We're healthy. Ended up doing it. But then High Rocks is something that came on the scene in the last couple of years. So I also did one of those. So that's basically a running event with 8 stations. So I completed that with my boyfriend at the beginning of this year. And I have one more coming up in 2 weeks. So as far as my training, it's been very high rock specific this past year, which is a lot of conditioning, a lot of running, a lot of erg work. So rowers, ski ergs, still doing some strength, but I would not say it's like in a traditional sense at all. It's more like, how does this carry over for high rock stuff? I'm actually already today. I reached out to somebody because I'm a big believer in coaches having coaches, but I reached out to somebody today because I think after I get through this high rocks, I do want to go back more into strength building, hypertrophy. Like I think I've lost a little bit of muscle and I don't love that. So getting a little bit back into that after I complete this next high rocks. But that's where I talk to people too. Like, what's the goal, right? Like, what are we training for? Is this performance based? Is this event based? Is this aesthetics? Like, it's going to look different depending on what your goals are. And for the past year, pretty much mine's been performance based. So that comes at the sacrifice sometimes of how I look, because I want to be able to perform. And sometimes I need to eat more. And sometimes
Mhm.
I might lose some muscle so that I'm faster or whatever that looks like. So yeah, I think I don't have like splits, I would say. It's just more of like lots of conditioning and a little bit of strength training right now.
Okay. So I'm thinking about like my own routine, and I do a lot of like bulk training when it comes like I do very simple exercises, I'll say. It's like I do a lot of bench press, arm curls, I'll do lateral raises, push-ups, pull-ups. So it's like all of like the, most common exercises, if you will. And I've thought about this is like because I think about what you're saying where it's like you want to do hard things, right? And it's like how can I continue to build around like my own like schedule of like how I work out, but also add in other things. Cause I'll give you an example. Like I went to an Orange Theory yoga class and I swear to God, I almost died in that room. It was so hot and it made me realize that like I don't have any flexibility. So now like I've started incorporating more stretching, like more body weight exercises to kind of build on my core muscles. And I'd be curious to hear from you from as I'm sure you've trained with men before, but like how do you get them out of their own head of like, expanding on like different exercises or different routines and things of that nature?
Yeah, so I think it comes back to what's important to you, right? Like what's the goal and then what's doable, what's realistic, right? So this does take time and energy to change up your training. I think your focus is you tried something and you maybe weren't as good as you thought, or it was harder than you thought it should be. I wonder how much of that was the heat component versus your body. So when it comes to flexibility and stretching, one of the best ways to do that is under load. So if you think about the movements you're already doing, it's exaggerating that range of motion a little bit more because doing a static stretch, just your body weight and let's say a forward fold, right? You're reaching for your toes. I'm telling you, you're going to get much more of a stretch if you're doing more of like a Jefferson curl or you're doing something under load. Now, everyone needs to be safe about that and not go too much too soon, but in general, your muscle, your tissues are going to respond better if something's under load versus just your own body weight. But just like with anything else, it gets better with consistency. So if you're serious about it, you're implementing it almost every time that you're in the gym, or maybe you have a little routine when you're in the sauna. So it's not that it's not doable. It's just how are we pivoting a little bit? I still think, regardless of what people's goals are, you need to have some type of strength training aspect and you need to have some type of conditioning aspect because both of those are important for longevity and overall health. And then you tweak it based off of what are my main goals right now. Like, am I running a marathon? Am I doing a powerlifting competition? Am I doing a CrossFit competition? Like, you have to tweak, but there's something for strength and conditioning within that program.
For sure. And you know what's funny too is like I've always hated cardio. It's the worst thing in the world for me because I run on like the sides of my feet. So if I do like extensive running, like my feet just start to hurt so bad. But it's like I'll play 2 hours of basketball and like I'll be fine, but then I'll go home and I'm like, I can't like get off the couch. So, it's so interesting because I used to back in college, like, we did a lot of conditioning, we did a lot of running miles at a time. And like, how do you help people like navigate like the world of cardio? Because one thing that I've really actually gotten into is like walking on a track or walking on a treadmill at an elevation. And I absolutely love it. I never thought I feel like I'm 90 years old now. I'm like walking around a track, but how do you like help people understand like there's so many different ways to, because I think it's about you want to stay in like a fat burning zone, right? So it's like how do you help people with like education around like their exercise and like kind of like navigating them to where they want to go?
So it's funny, I think this is the second time you said that you don't like running. And in my head, I'm thinking there's other ways to do conditioning. You don't have to run. But with any cardio, it's kind of like strength training, right? Like I wouldn't expect someone to come in and load up and do a PR on their deadlift. So I'm not expecting someone to come and run an all out fastest mile they've ever ran in their life. I think whenever you think of cardio, it's very similar to strength in the fact that it's frequency, duration, and intensity. So like those are the kind of three variables that I think about. So how often are we doing it? Frequency. How long are we doing it? Duration. And how intense are we doing it? Start low and slow. Now, here's the thing, because you said fat burning, they're all important. So you're thinking of like lower intensity, higher intensity. So lower intensity is going to be more fat burning, higher intensity is more carb, glycogen burning. They're all important, but especially to start, and honestly, even some of the fastest runners or fastest cardio people, they do spend a lot of time down here because this is their base. Their zone two is it you maybe heard of, anyone listening, but it's basically very sustainable cardio. It's quote unquote boring cardio, or it can be boring, but it's super important that you spend time here because however wide your base is how high you can go. So if you don't have a really good conditioning base, it is harder to do more intense things. You still need to do those things, but just not as much. Like you can touch on them, like do your all out bike sprint or your all out sprint down the basketball court to go get the ball or whatever. You don't need to do it every day. You need to do that low and slow and then start to build the intensities. But this is where, again, I said, I'm a big fan of coaches having coaches. I'm not as great when it comes to the building of, let's say, a run program. I hire out. Like I have a great coach right now that's been programming for me for a year for High Rocks, and I've gotten so much faster with his running program. But I didn't start out like that. Like you do run walk, right? So it's run 2 minutes, walk a minute. Then the next week it's run 3 minutes, walk a minute. So you're basically adding more time that you're running and lowering the amounts of time that you're walking to build up your capacity.
Hmm.
It's starting somewhere and building, and don't get discouraged, because I think a lot of people, especially with conditioning, they feel like, oh my god, how am I out of breath after that? It's like, yeah, but when's the last time
Yeah.
you ran? Like you can't expect to again go and do your PR if you haven't done anything to build up to that. So you have to have some persistence with yourself.
100%. You know, it's funny. I was golfing a couple weeks ago, and there's this guy. He runs it's pickleball slash like bar and grill place, and I was like, that's actually a genius idea. But is he was talking about how like people will come in, they pickleball is a competitive activity, and people they start to get their heart rate up, and he's like, we've had like 3 people have heart attacks. I'm like,
Oh
oh,
my
that
gosh.
I know. I was like, I hope you have good insurance because that is terrifying. And I think it's so interesting too because, like you said, people like your base is as high as like you can build yourself up to, and I think that's what's really important is like starting slow because I feel like the athlete in me, if like I didn't work out for 6 months, I would try and like I'd try and go lift like I lift today, and I'd probably go try and play basketball, and it's just like it's not feasible. You got to work your way up to that. And
Mhm.
I think that's another area where people like will struggle because it's like they compare themselves to others. I don't know if people can help doing that. Whereas I even find myself doing that. I'm like at the gym. I'm like, oh, I'm not the strongest guy in the gym today, so it's like I don't have to go as hard. But again, I think keeping people motivated in those areas and seeing those small incremental wins are that's really where the miracles take place.
Mhm. And I think you said comparing themselves to others. I think a lot of people compare themselves to themselves. Like they
Yeah.
compare themselves to previous versions of themselves. And I'm like, yeah, but that's not you anymore. Like you're not that person. So what does this person today need? And they
Hmm.
get kind of caught up on what they could do, but the opposite can happen too, right? Like I think I'm running faster now than I've in my entire life. So you can do all the things. You just have to be a little strategic about it and get help when you need it. Like even for me, I've been in the industry for 15 years. I still hire out when I don't feel like I'm the right person for the job. And if I have people come to me and they say, "Hey, I want to train for a marathon," or "Hey, I want to train for a high rocks," I'm like, "I got a guy." I'm not going to
Yeah.
take these people, like that's not my specialty. I got a guy for you, and you're going to be in good hands. So I think it's also having that network of people for whatever that goal may be.
Well, and I think that's what's so wonderful about the fitness community is, it's so supportive. And, you know, to not just take on clients just to take on clients, but to recommend them to the people that are really going to help in the areas that they need help. I mean, I commend you for that because you don't see that a whole lot these days because it's like, I can help you fix everything. But here, all right, what I want to do here is I want to fire off some questions. So these are just quick answers. So the first one is like, what is the hardest macro to balance?
Hardest macro like nutrition? Oh, for me, honestly, this is going to sound silly, but protein because I overdo it. Like I think for the longest time I got stuck in protein, 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 and then like carbs took a back seat or fats took a back seat. And so getting enough of those two things, and not everything needs to have protein in it.
Okay, I like it. I'm on the opposite end where it's I definitely don't eat enough protein some days, and it's like I'm like I'll just get it from eggs. I'll eat steak all the time, but it's like I need to do so much more.
Another
Uh,
Chipotle meal. Yeah.
I just for real. I'm gonna go get Chipotle tonight. I feel like so. All right, what is like your go-to late night snack?
I'm gonna sound so lame. I'm normally between one or three things. So I think you said you've looked a couple times on my social media. So I make creamies, which is like basic again, protein ice cream. So I'll have that. This is gonna sound so like she's a nutrition coach. I love at night. I do caramel rice cakes with granola nut butter. So it's like nut butter that's based off granola. So it tastes like frosting. And then I
Hmm.
put chocolate chips on it. So like it's crunchy, it's sweet, it's savory. Like that's a good one. And then sometimes I do a banana bread mug cake. And so that's like banana and oats and a couple other
Hmm.
things. But yeah. So one of those three typically is what I have at night.
For sure. Have you ever had Himalayan sweetness popcorn?
No.
My god, so it is so good, but it's like cooked in canola oil and it has like a little bit of sweetness because for me, sugar cravings kill me at night. And so I'll have a little bit of that. It's like coconut, sugary, but then I also add in like some like dark chocolate chips. So I get like that nice little hint of sweetness, but it's like it's portion control, right? So I can't have like, a fistful of chocolate chips, but if I just mix them in there a little bit, that is my go-to under 200 calories.
That's what I was gonna say with the popcorn. If it's not pre-portioned out, I'm gonna keep eating that thing.
It's like a bag of chips. It's like I can't stop, you know?
Yeah.
All right, next one is what is one fitness myth you wish would die?
Mm,
I was hating on Ozempic earlier, but now I realize that it does help a lot of people. So what's another one?
I think again, I think a lot more with like women's health. So I think more of like avoiding higher intensity. I think there's all this stuff around like, oh, it raises your cortisol. And I think that's not great because the way to get better at something is not to avoid it. And so I think if you never do it, it's not going to help you either. So again, be smart, be strategic, but to say that women around menopause, perimenopause should never do higher intensity, I don't agree with. So that would be a current one that I think needs to die.
I like it. I like it. And then all right, this is a personal one. What is your most hilarious gym fail story?
Oh, that's a good one. I probably would say I mean, it's not, I dislocated my shoulder, but that's not funny. And that's not like a fail. That's like a fluke and not fun. I was doing box squats and I didn't have my rack set up very well. And I basically sat and I couldn't stand back up and I didn't have like the safety arm set up to be able to catch the bar. So I basically was sitting there and I had to yell at someone to come help me because I couldn't get up and I didn't want to let the bar just roll off because it would hit the box and then it would probably roll. So that was probably my most embarrassing, like, whoops on me not getting my rack set up appropriately. But other than that, I haven't had major ones, which is kind of crazy because I basically live in the gym.
Right? I was gonna say I was hoping you maybe had three stories. No,
Oh no.
I know that feeling of like I remember one time I was going for a PR on bench press, and I know that I should always have a spot, but I was like feeling super confident, and I dropped the bar down, and it didn't move an inch, and I was like, oh my god, and I was like, help! So like two guys came over, grabbed it off of me, and I was like, oh, I just like put my head down. I was like, I got to go hide out in some other place in the gym here, but
Oh,
there's nothing worse than getting a bar stuck on you. It's humiliating.
Yeah, and you're like, I don't know what to do. Like you start to panic. Yeah. I remember seeing something once where it was a tip on bench where you actually don't put clamps on when you're going heavy so that you can
Mhm.
shift it side to side to let the weights fall off. But still it's loud and clangy and embarrassing. So you're like, I'm not gonna do
Well,
that.
that's like the Ronnie Coleman advice. It's like you never put it on there, and you got to slam the weights into there so it makes a loud noise, so people look over at you. No, like but no,
Yeah.
I actually I never work out with clamps. That's actually the reason why, because I was like, I know I can just bring it down and just slide them all the way off. But
Yeah.
no, that's great. So you mentioned, you have some fitness goals here in the future. Walk us through those again, and then anything else that you're really looking forward to in 2026.
So right now my immediate one's High Rocks. So I'm
Hmm.
competing in about 2 weeks in Chicago. And last time I did mixed doubles, so that means guy girl teams. This time I'm doing girl girl team. So it's a little bit different from like a weight perspective, but we do the same thing. So that's soon. Then after that, I like I said, I do want to get back more into like just some traditional strength training. Maybe cut back on that conditioning a little bit because the competition will be done. And then next year, I do like to always have something big, like some big trip or some big physical, feat to work towards. So I think my boyfriend and I have talked for a little over a year now of doing Mount Blanc. So it's basically an anywhere from 8 to 12 day hike where you're not hiking up it, you're hiking around it. And they basically have different companies that can take and move your stuff. So you stay in different hotels throughout the trip, but it's basically multiple days of hiking. So I do like things with nature. I'll just tell something really quick. So, whenever I am working with clients, a lot of people come with a weight loss goal. They come with a number on the scale, they come with maybe an aesthetic. And I really encourage people to find adventures and find endeavors that not only will hold them accountable to doing those daily things they need to do, but I always put it this way too. If you step on the scale and you see your goal weight, that's great, but like it's like very fleeting. Versus if you say, I want to hike the Grand Canyon, and I'm telling you, when you finish that thing, that feeling's not going to leave you. Like you're going to, on your deathbed, remember hiking the Grand Canyon. You're not going to remember when you stepped on the scale for your goal weight. So I really encourage people to find things that are challenging, that maybe are a little bit harder than what they think they can do. Because not only is it going to hold them accountable on the journey, but it's going to be a lot more memorable than some of those other things that might be goals.
You couldn't be more correct, and I think that's something that I sort of struggled with for a long time. Was like I'm always so focused on the number on the scale, and it's like my goal weight is like I keep it pretty broad. I want it to be like just say I want to be under 215 pounds, and so like I got down to like 190. I look like I was anorexic, to be honest with you. But now it's like I've recognized, like you said, where it's like it should never be about like the number on the scale. It's good to like keep track of where you're at. But again, I think when you look at, having goals outside of that are more like life goals, that a lot like your body is allowing you to accomplish those things. I think that is probably the best piece of advice I've heard in a long time. So that's
Hmm.
awesome. So hey, I cannot thank you enough for joining our podcast. We're already 7 minutes over the time I told you here. But no, I think what you're doing is absolutely amazing, and it's so good to reconnect with you. I know I saw you a couple months ago at St. Louis Park, but no, I'm glad that we were able to connect on this podcast and just hear your story. I think what you're doing is absolutely amazing.
Well, thank you. And I'm happy to hear of your, recent health journey and some of the things that you still are becoming aware of. And as you continue to work on that, like you said, it's a journey. It's not meant to end. We want to stay on this thing, right? Like if it's ending, then it means we're probably not alive anymore. It's like be persistent and be grateful for what you do have, but then also pursuing more. And I think that's like the rise and go is kind of that. Like when you said before we started recording what gets you out of bed and get you going. And I think it is that pursuit of betterment. Like it's
Mhm.
continuing to show up and strive for more. So wherever people are at on their journey and whatever that next step looks like.
You know what, Lindsay? You just reminded me, because I told you that I forgot to ask this in my last podcast, but
I
you
just
you you
answered
you
it.
you did, and I'm glad that you brought that up. And again, I think you're helping so many people, and I see the joy on your customers' faces, and I think that's the most important thing, is like you're changing lives for the better. And I I'm so happy for you to see where you're at these days. And I think you've got wonderful things ahead for you.
Oh, well, thank you, Mike.
You're very welcome. Okay, before you go, one last time, share where people can find you on social media.
So on social media, my handle is life with coach underscore low. So it stands for Lindsay Ogden. So life with coach underscore low on Instagram. That's the main social site. I'm not really on TikTok or anything else. So that would be the place.
I was to say, good for you. TikTok it drives me insane because I have no idea how to utilize the platform. So it's like I've spent so much of my time on Instagram. Well, hey, we'll chat offline, but for our listeners, go to www.theelevantbrand.com. Check out our apparel. We got some cool stuff coming with some wild and Timberwolves themed colors because it is the season. And Lindsay, we'll definitely chat soon. Thank you again.
All right. Thank you.